Welcome patrons to, or should I say, Deadites, to another How to Play. This one's going to be of the Evil Dead 2 board game. Alright, so the first thing you want to do is set up the board. I've already done it here. You take these little tiles, and there's little numbers that correspond on each part of the board here, and you put that many tiles in that spot after you've already mixed them up and got your Necronomicon pages sorted out, because which is that right there is Necronomicon page, which for however many players there are, that's how many pages you'll be using. So alright, next you'll want to pick your characters. You got all the classic characters from Evil Dead 2, and also grab their corresponding human pawn and their Deadite pawn. As you can see here, they have one of each, because throughout the game you can turn into Deadites. Ash has 3 characters because you can be Combat Ash or regular Ash. Alright, the next step. This step really only comes into play is if you have the extras pack that you could buy separately with the game. You'll want to separate any of the cards from the event deck that spawn a boss card. Boss card being the possessed deer, Henrietta, the hand, the hand that he has to chop off, the squirrel, all those. So all the boss cards you have to separate, and then you can either randomly draw 3 of them, or you can pick which 3 you want to fight during the game. So that's the next step. All right, after you've gotten your 3 bad guy cards, you're going to want to add them to the regular event deck, shuffle them up, and remove the we're gonna die card. That is when the rotten apple head comes out, the big baddie right there. When he comes out, remove that one. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna shuffle these guys up and draw 4 of them to place on the bottom of the deck, and then you place this one on top. That basically just marks you're running out of time to complete your objectives in the game, and then you put the rest on top, which should be 10 go on top of that, and then the event deck is ready. Alright, next you're going to want to get your corruption deck ready, which is this one here. So inside the corruption deck you'll have Deadite cards and human cards. Depending on how many players you have, that's how many human cards you'll need and how many Deadite cards you'll need. For a 3-player game, you get 1 Deadite card and 11 human cards. So you just put all those in there, and then you shuffle up the corruption deck, and it's ready to go. Alright, one of the next to last things that you want to do is take your human character and put them somewhere within the cabin areas. So on the board here you'll see these little orange lines. See the little orange lines? That's separating each part of the cabin. So you can put them in any of those spaces. That's also how you move. So on the outside you have these like little cracks in the ground. That's how you know what a space is when you're moving along. So you put your human figures inside the cabin, and then you deal 1 corruption card to each player, and you don't look at them at this time. You look at the corruption cards once you find your first Necronomicon page, or you get a second corruption card. So don't look at those at the beginning of the game. Alright, after you got your guys in the cabin here, you've dealt your corruption cards, everybody got their players and everything. You'll also want to pass out one of these item reference cards here. As you can see, they tell you how many is on the board. So like there's three of these out here on the board in these little stacks. And that way you can keep track of what you have too. So make sure you deal one of those out. All right, now I want to talk about the character cards. As you can see here, we have Ash, the main protagonist of the Evil Dead 2. You see here, he's got different numbers for each thing that he can do. So 5 wounds means he can take 5 hits before he gets knocked out. 3 means he has an attack die of 3 when he's attacking Deadites or Deadite bosses. 2, speed means he can move 2 spaces around the map here. And then a virtue of 1 means he gets 1 dice to roll for virtue, which we'll talk about a little later. All right, once you got everything set up here, you'll want to figure out who the first player is. You can do that randomly. They'll get this little token here, that's the Necronomicon. And you'll want to draw an event card, which I already have done here, which is right here. And then on the event cards, you can see here for a 3-player game, which that's what we're playing, you take 1 Deadite, put him on I, and another Deadite and put him on B. That's regular Deadites. So you'll take one of these little fancy guys here, put it on I and B, which is going to be all the way over here. So there we go. So the Deadites are placed. And then also on the card here, you'll see it says, for the rest of the round, all characters lose 1 virtue. Virtue checks with 0 dice automatically fail. So that means when you're checking for virtue, which is usually after an attack, either the Deadite attacks you or you attack a Deadite, if you have a 0, you just automatically fail that, which means you get another corruption card. And while we're on the subject of virtue, here is the chart that shows you how to check for virtue. If you fail these checks, that means when you fail, you either roll a nothing on the die or a Deadite head. That means you have to take another corruption. The only way to succeed is rolling the chainsaw. So basically, when you're making virtue checks, that means you take corruption cards, because once you run out of the corruption cards, the Deadite players win and you lose. So there you go. All right, now I'm going to run through a player turn scenario. So we'll say we're playing as Ash. As you can see, I can move through any of the areas marked with the orange line here. There's right there, there's one here, so I can move any of those ways. And since I have a speed of 2, that means I can move 2 spaces. But for the sake of this, for the sake of an example, I'm going to move here. So each player has 3 actions they can take. Movement, scavenge, which means you can look at these tiles and take one, cast a spell, which I'll get into later, or attack. So that's the main actions you can do. So I moved, so that's 1 action. Now I want to fight this Deadite. So how do you do that? Well, look down here at our card. We have an attack of 3 with Ash. So we'll take the 3 corruption dice and we'll roll them. Okay, so how you win with the corruption dice. So I got 3 chainsaws and a neutral. That means that I win because I have more successes than I do failures. Neutrals and Deadite heads are failures. So I have more successes than failures. So I look at how many successes do I have. I have 2 successes. So if there were 2 Deadites in this area with me, I would kill them both. But since there's only one, I just kill him, and that's it. Nothing else happens. Now let's say I rolled this. 1 success, 2 failures. Well, that means I have more failures than successes, which means I take 1 wound, which is indicated by this little token. Put it on my card. And I have to roll a virtue roll. So how do you do that? How do you roll a virtue roll? Well, you take 1 dice, because if you go down to Ash's card here, he has a virtue of 1. That means for a virtue roll, he only rolls 1 dice. So we're going to go ahead and do that. Okay, so I failed. What that means is I have to take another corruption card. And since that is my second corruption card, I would get to look at those cards now. Don't show them to anybody else. You just look at them. Okay. And that's what I got. So I would want to hide this card here and not let anybody know off the bat, because that's a whole nother scenario we'll get into later. All right, now let's say I would have rolled that. Well, I would have succeeded, and I would not have taken that extra corruption card. If I would have rolled this, again, it's just a failure. You take another corruption card. The Deadite head and that doesn't really matter for virtue rolls. It's just success or fail. All right, and here's another example. Say I only had 2 attack. I didn't have the 3 attack. And I rolled this right here. Well, I got equal number of successes to fails. What happens then? Well, you don't take the wound, you don't get wounded, but you do have to make a virtue check. So you still have to do that. All right, here's another example of a player attacking action. So I jumped in this room and it's got 4 Deadites in it. Well, if there's more than 3 Deadite minions in a room, you automatically take 1 wound. So if there's 3 in there, you don't have to take a wound. But if there's more than 3, you take 1 wound for each additional Deadite minion. So there's only 1, so I would take an extra wound. And now, how do you fight these guys? Well, there's a bunch of them in there, but you only have an attack of 3. You don't fight each one individually. Your attack goes against all of them. So you roll. Okay, so you didn't do very well. This would mean, again, you got more failures than successes, so you would have to roll a virtue check and take another damage. You'd take another wound, and you'd have to roll a virtue check, and all those guys would still be in there with you. All right, now that we went through a bunch of different attack scenarios there, we still have 1 action. So we moved from here to here with 1 action. We attacked with another action, and we have 1 action left. So what I'm going to do is scavenge, which that means to scavenge, you flip over this and you take whatever is there. So I would definitely take that, because you need those to win the game as the humans. You need those pages. So here's another scenario though. Say I was here and I wanted to scavenge. There's 2 tiles here. Well, what you do is you flip over both, leave them flipped over, and you take whichever one you want. In this case, they're both pages, so you just take one of the pages. But if it was another item, you could take that instead. But you only take 1, and you leave the other one flipped up. All right, also on your turn, we're gonna run through another little scenario. Say I was over here with Jake. I could trade with him. If he had some tokens that I wanted, or if he wanted some of mine, we could have a mutual trade that we could work out. There are tokens that make it so you can just steal straight from another player. but you can make a friendly trade as well. All right, also on your turn, you can, as an action, one of your 3 actions, you can remove a barrier. So say this is, you got your barrier here covering this window. You can take one of your actions and get rid of that guy so you can move through there. Also on your turn, you may want to cast a spell. As you can see here, there's a ton of spells you can cast, all with their own caveats on how to use them. This one you need 3 pages. This one you have to have 3 pages. It looks like you lose a turn. Like they all have their own little caveats here to use a page. And you have to have a page to do it. So you'd have to burn one of those pages to use any of these. I'm not going to go through each and every one of them, but there's a good overview of them. All right. Also, there's another thing you can do. As I said before, as you're walking through and using the scavenge action, you will pick up these little tokens. And for every token you have, you can use that thing. So if you have the axe, you can use it. Some of them say you have to discard it to use it. Some of them you keep for the duration of the game, like the axe and the chainsaw. But you can use these items anytime on your turn. Not on anybody else's turn, but on your turn. And the pages are not technically an item. They're separate because you actually have to use an action to use those. But these guys over here, you can use them with no action on your turn. So it doesn't cost an action to use any of these guys, but it has to be on your turn. All right, here's a item I kind of wanted to go through just because it has its special tokens for it. So there is a item you can get called the wooden spikes. So it's right there. So what you do with that, once you use that token, you take it off, and then you get one of these tokens that look like that. So wherever you are, wherever you've used that item, you put that there. So when a Deadite enters this area, boom, he automatically dies and the trap's used. So it's kind of a little bit different than a lot of the other ones, so I just wanted to throw that in there and let you know how that works. It's pretty simple, pretty straightforward, but yeah. All right, now after all the players have taken their turns, now it's the Deadite's turn to move. So the way the Deadites move, the normal Deadite minions is what they're called, which is these guys right here. They move 1 space towards the nearest player. So whoever's the closest to them, which on this situation it'd be her, he would move to her. He would move closer to Jake there in the bathroom or the kitchen, and yeah, that would be their turn, or well, their movement turn. But after you've moved all of the minions, then you look around and see which player characters have a minion in their spot with them. Well, we got one here. So what would happen is this Deadite would attack Annie here. The way they attack is they roll with 1 corruption dice. They roll, boop. Okay. Well, chainsaw is your favor, so you win that exchange. Nothing happens. Nothing bad happens. You're good to go. You don't have to worry about it. But if you would have rolled this, got a neutral, well, you'd have to drop one of your Necronomicon pages if you had any. And then you would have to make a virtue check, which we discussed earlier. Say you would have rolled this guy. That's the worst you can roll, because not only do you drop your page, but you also take a wound, one of these, and you have to make a virtue check. So that's Deadites attacking, and then that's the end of the round after that. All right, you're probably wondering how do I win the game? Well, for the human players, what you're going to want to do is fill this track up here for however how many players you have from 6, all the way to 3 there. You have to fill this whole track plus this one to win for the human players. For the Deadite players, you fill this track all the way from however many players to there. That's how you win for humans and Deadites. Well, Deadites do have a couple other ways they can win. If the corruption deck runs out, they win. If the event deck runs out, they win. So the humans are a little bit disadvantaged, but it is not impossible to win, obviously. But that's how you win. All right, so this scenario is going to be, we've gotten through a little bit of the game. There's some other characters out on the board and such whatnot. So we decide we want to reveal that we are a Deadite. So we flip over a Deadite card to show that hey, look, we're the Deadite. You don't have to flip over the other ones because sometimes there's multiple Deadite cards. 3-player game, there's only one, so everybody will know, okay, that's it. That doesn't mean you don't stop taking corruption cards when you make your virtue checks, though, because that's another way the Deadites win. So you got to keep taking that virtue check and taking corruption cards if you fail. But you got your Deadite on the board, and it's Ash. So we'll pull out Ash's Deadite guy, and he turns into Deadite Ash, which is right there. It's pretty neat looking. So he is permanently Deadite Ash. Everybody knows it now. The whole set of rules for him changes now. So he's wanting to, instead of fill the human side with pages, he's wanting to fill the Deadite side with pages. So every time he throws one in the portal, that goes on the other side for the Deadites. And now he can move through Deadites with no problem. You can fight human players, which is basically the same way you fight a Deadite, except they take wounds instead of die. And you can cast spells and stuff just the same way as well. There's things that are just for Deadites, actually. As you can see here, the command Deadite, that's only for Deadites to use, and summon Deadite too. I'm sorry, no, command Deadite is for everybody, but summon Deadite is only for the Deadite players. So you can summon Deadites. So you can summon them from the ether. But yeah, so so your whole goal has changed at that point, and you want to make everybody suffer. But that's also another part of the game. Ever since you got a page or another card that you were a Deadite or not. So you could have been playing, slightly against everybody without them ever even knowing. So there are multiple ways that you will reveal yourself as a Deadite. If you attack another player, obviously, cast summon Kandarian demon, which you can do that. You can just summon a demon and then they know. Choose to have Deadites ignore you. So you can either fight them like normal, or you can just walk through them. And if you walk through them, obviously, we know you're a Deadite. Choose to not be affected by a card that affects human players. There you go. So that's how you could either accidentally reveal yourself, or if you just want to reveal yourself, you can do it that way as well. But yeah, so not a whole lot changes for that character besides his goals. He still has the same stuff as he would as a human. There's certain things obviously he can't use, like holy water and stuff like that, but the pendant is human players only. But yeah, so you're just trying to destroy the human race at that point. Also, when you take virtue rolls as the Deadite, you don't take any corruption cards, but for every failed roll you get, because this is still a success for you. It's just like everybody else. So if you get that, you're good. But if you get that or neutral, then you have to take a wound instead of a corruption card. All right, after the
players have went, and then the Deadites have went, and then obviously you just keep going around. It goes to the next round. You move the player token to your left clockwise, and then you start another round. You draw a new event card, do what it says there, place your Deadites, do whatever the directions tell you to do, and you're on to another round. Now, once you get all the way down to the last two, when the rotten apple head shows up, which is 10 cards deep here, boom, there it is. He shows up there. Then he comes out to play, and he is very difficult. If you get that far in the game, you'll probably find it pretty difficult to beat him because he doesn't die. He just keeps coming back and back, and you can't throw pages in the portal like you need to win the game with him standing there, so you have to knock him out while somebody else is throwing pages in the portal. So it's much more difficult once he comes out, which makes sense. But yeah. So that's the overview of Evil Dead 2, the board game. There's a lot more to it as far as fighting bosses and stuff like that. There are reference cards for a lot of the bosses, and if you have the extras pack, there's extra bosses in there, like I said before. There's all these cool little minis that go with it all over the place. You can switch out these for some of the tiles even, so that's really cool. There's Deadite players for each player, so it's very neat. But yeah, that is the overall overview of Evil Dead 2. I hope this was helpful, and we'll see you on part 2 when we're actually doing a playthrough and a review of this bad boy. We'll have a special guest and everything, so it'll be great. But for now, thanks for watching the Drunken Pawn. Make sure you subscribe. My name is Steven, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.